Hello, good morning, welcome. I'm Samuel Trapp, this international flavor. I'm coming to you live from the Lake Ozark Real Estate of the Art Studio. Coming to you live on damradio.com/live in reverse, or in the past, as it were. You know what? We should change it. Instead of damradio.com/podcast, we should call it damradio.com/past, because it's in the past. It's history. It is now history. Kind of like the, and you know, my initial reaction to this is just bull crap is my initial reaction to this. And I'm not sure if I can get it. They're going to want me to pay for it, I'm sure. And let's see. I want to see it, but it does give the page, so I can get on to Pacer and pull it off. Maybe I'll try to do that. It's a 26-page docket, and it is United States District Court for the Southern District of Florida. This is now my initial reaction before I ever read this is that. Let's see, that would be uscourts.gov SDFL, wouldn't it? Let's see if we can find this, because I've been thinking about this stupidity ever since, and this is lawyers being a-holes is all this is. And in my opinion, and idiotic, you know, is what this is. Site cannot be reached. I wonder if it's if we are blocked in the studio. Wonder why. Wonder if I go to my base account. I'm sorry to be doing this on the fly while we're sitting here, but this is craziness. And here we are again. Where's my registered app? I have to do two-party login. Well, I'm trying to get on and get the Castro indictment. I want the original document from the court. I don't trust the ones that people ship out to you from New York Times and elsewhere. I don't trust any of those people. So, nor should you. It's a bad plan all the way around. But I got to get onto my Google Authenticator in order to log in. And sorry you get to walk through this with me, but where is my account? Hello, how's the family? 555-943 will get you in. 943. And are we in? We are indeed in. Son of a nutcracker, they're doing it again. So the second time, if you have to go in, it's 378-541. 378-541. Entered. I understand. Quit quizzing me. Let's see. Please choose a court. Well, I tried to. SDFL. Nope, not South Carolina. FL. Sorry you people get to listen to this, but here we are. Florida Southern District. There we have it. Southern District of Florida documents. Here we are. Query. What's this guy's name? Raul Castro, right? Castro. They're indicting him for murder, is what I hear. And you know, he's not a citizen of America. And this is my problem. The party defendant is Raul Raul, party defendant. Maybe it's because he filed action here before and submitted himself previously to, here's a file closed in 1991, Gonzalez versus Castro. Where's the latest ones? These are not it. But this gives me the case number. I have the case number. So at least if they're not lying to us on the news. Here it is case number 0303 USA Raul Modesto Castro Ruz. Okay, so we're going to go back because this was just Raul Modesto, party defendant. Here he is, 03, filed 8/21 of 03. So they're game playing for sure. And if we go to the history and documents and run the query, oh, yep. So this is, so now they're claiming, so that you can't see the prior case. Filed 4/23 of 2026, motion for miscellaneous relief, order on motion for miscellaneous receipt, and then here we go, indictment filed 4/23 of 2026. And I'm going to download this so JR can have it later. Cost me $2.60. My download will come into the zip and we shall keep it up. Here's document number 8. Okay, sorry to go through all of that with you here, but this was entered on 4/29 of 2026 and filed by BMDC Angela Noble, Clerk of District Court, U.S. of America, by Raul Modesto Castro Ruiz. So this indicates to me that what we're going to do is we're going to be flying into Cuba, attacking somebody, and here's a superseding indictment. General allegations. Let's see. We're going to read this whole thing to you just because, okay? The grand jury, so this is a grand jury. First of all, you can indict a ham sandwich into a grand jury because nobody's there, okay? So this isn't a prosecutor taking a stand. This is a prosecutor saying, well, citizens, 12 citizens, or 8 said, whatever the hell they pick, 12 citizens indicted this man, so they got to believe something. Well, they only believe what you tell them, you dumbass. They only believe that because you said something to them, and you're the lawyer. So there's nobody present but you. And there's nobody for the defense. There's no rules of evidence. There's nothing. It's whatever you say. So if you don't want to indict him, guess what you do? You shut up and nobody gets indicted. Right? But if you want him to be indicted, you can say any lie that you want to say and then not take, not take responsibility for it, right? You don't have to worry about all of that. And this is all over JR's TVs is the reason I'm watching this. And I was interested in it anyway. But oh my God, they've indicted the man. They indicted him on April the 23rd, you assholes. It's like, why are we putting it out now? And it was entered in the Florida Southern District docket on April the 29th of 2026. These guys are lying to you just like they always do, and they call it a superseding indictment. Something's happened. Now, first of all, this case is case number 03 CR 20685. 03, you know what that means? 2003 is the first time they tried to file this. And when you look at the freaking docket and you look at the docket sheet, which is why you have to go to the docket sheet, because these people lie. And they lie across the board. You know, this is just BS. There's an attachment. It's restricted, which means I can't probably get it. Let's see. This document is sealed and not available. It's probably the original indictment because the document history starts at number 6, document number 6, motion for miscellaneous relief. Let's read that, son of a bucket, and we'll download this for you. Sealed documents are no longer available in CMS or CMF or via PACER. Contact the court directly to request the document. So this document has been sealed, okay? So this is the request for miscellaneous relief, and they sealed it. And that is why they've done it. And so they don't want you to be able to get it, right? And they don't want, it's not public. Well, it can be public. You send a sunshine request or whatever. And then there's the order for miscellaneous relief. Well, let's see if that one is sealed as well. View document This one, sealed documents are no longer available, so I'm paying whatever. I paid 10 cents for that new document that says, you can't have it. Motion to unseal the case. Here's one in number 10. Motion to unseal. This came afterward. Maybe now this is why it's unsealed, right? Maybe now they've unsealed something, view, document, nothing's happening. I'm trying to pay the dime. Come on. To accept the charges, view document. Otherwise, nothing. Wonder how many times I paid for that. Wonder how many times I've done that. Let's see. But I do have the indictment now, but you can't get the rest. It's they object. They don't want to give it to me. Come on. What have I done? Son of a nutcracker. Let's see if I go back. That's the New York Times. I don't want that version. I don't like you. Well, I'm on a roll today. Let's go back to our Southern District of Florida. Pacer login. Southern District, Florida. Florida. Duh. Anyway, I am grumpy about this. Let's go back to the query and let us go back to what's his name? The old, what have I been blocked? Hide the case. We want Raul Perez. That is not who we're after here, folks, friends, and neighbors. Where are we in our document download? Okay, let's get back there. We want case number 03CR and the superseding indictment. Here we go. But you can't get the rest. They haven't unlocked it. And there's stuff that is unavailable, and that is unavailable to us and Luis Raul Gonzalez. Who are these people? There's a bunch of people listed. Lorenzo Alberto Perez, Emilio Jose Palacio Blanco, Jose Fidel Gual Barzaga, Raul Simanca Cardenas, and Luis Raul Gonzalez Pardo Rodriguez, defendants. Superseding indictment. Okay, this thing is... How many pages we got here, friends and neighbors? Page 1 of 26. Superseding indictment. Introduction. Since seizing power over the Republic of Cuba in 1959. So this is your grand write-up of why the U.S. should be able to charge anybody on the planet with murder, which is not what the law says, but they're doing it anyway. Because they're crooks. That's my initial take of how you file murder charges against somebody in another country. It's bullshit. Since seizing power of the Republic of Cuba in 1959, Fidel Castro, Raul Modesto Castro Ruz, as depicted below, they put their pictures, and others establish a dictatorship, the Castro regime, designed to maintain and protect their rule and prevent regime change. What do? So we engage in regime change. That's what we do. It's what we live for, right? And some people are all happy about this. I am not. It's none of your freaking business. Stay out of it. For the next several decades, Cubans fled to the United States through the Florida Straits, risking their lives and many times resulting in the death of those migrants in those waters on their journey to freedom. Hermanos al Rescate, Brothers to the Rescue, Inc., BTTR, was organized in Miami and flew unarmed Cessna aircraft to rescue or guide Cuban migrants stranded or lost at sea. In the 90s, BTR's flights also flew to support anti-Castro, pro-democracy movements in Cuba. So they're meddling in other countries. Now, fine, good for them. That's fine. Cuba sent spies to Miami, Florida to obtain information on BTTR and report back to the Castro regime. These spies were part of a group codenamed La Red Avispa, the WASP network. The spies successfully infiltrated BTR, reported back to the Castro regime on BTTR activity on around January 1996. BTTR flew unarmed Cessna aircraft in and around Cuban airspace and dropped pro-democracy leaflets that landed on the Cuban mainland. Cessna aircraft used by BTTR flew at speed significantly slower than the Cuban MiG fighter jets. In or around January 1996, the Cuban military, headed by Castro Ruz, engaged in training missions, during which Cuban MiG fighter jets located and followed planes with flight speeds and at the altitudes as those planes used by BTTR. So they trailed them. The U.S. does the same thing. If we want to harass somebody, we do the same thing. Escort their planes, right? We seize their ships. We do whatever else we feel like. We surround their island, okay? In or around February 96, pro-democracy groups in Cuba planned demonstrations in Cuba, and BTTR planned to support those demonstrations through flights to Cuba at the time of the demonstration. The Castro regime did not permit the planned pro-democracy demonstrations. I imagine democracy would be well received in Cuba, right? Just like it is in Ukraine, right? That place isn't corrupt, not remotely, right? And BTTR planned blah, blah, blah. The Castro regime did not permit the planned pro-democracy demonstrations in Cuba at that time. There's a surprise. They know that. It's a dictatorship. You already said that ahead. You said that. Well, Qatar's a dictatorship too. Imagine if we went and scheduled a pro-democracy what do you call it? A pro-democracy demonstration in front of the prince's residence or in the prince's private airport, right next to the real airport. Then you might have some arrests and people punished for it, because guess what? That's a dictatorship too. But we're not attacking Qatar. We're not attacking anybody else that has dictatorships around the planet. Well, secretly we are, but we're not charging them with murder. We're getting new airplanes from them. They're getting new airplanes. Oh, geez, since they're our friends and they provide us with oil and they don't piss us off like everybody else does, well, you know what we'll do? Since they lick our rear ends, we will lick back. And we'll never say a word. But if we don't like you, we're going to fly in, send some special forces goons to go in there and to kill people and seize you and arrest you for criminal charges in America. Why? Because we're the biggest swinging dicks on the planet, and that's what we do because we played football. Hoorah! We're in the Marines. Hoorah! That's what we did. And so in or around 26, these pro-democracy groups planned their demonstrations, and they didn't get to go. The Castro regime didn't permit them, surprise, and the planned democracy demonstrations at Cuba at that time and instructed its spies not to fly with BTTR during the planned BTTR flights in February 96. On February 24, on February 24, 1996, 3 BTR aircraft flew from South Florida toward Cuba anyway, and Cuban MiGs shot down 2 of them in international waters, killing 4 U.S. nationals and 3 American citizens. Okay? Well, if you're going to take risks like that, how do I want to put this? If you're going to go to Ukraine and fight on behalf of Ukraine, in Ukraine, against the Russians, and the Russians kill you, that's not on us. We don't get to charge Vladimir Putin with a crime because he happens to lead the country that you're fighting against and somebody killed you. It's crap. Do we say it's, we say the same thing, right? We say the same thing. If a Ukrainian goes into Russia and bombs in Kursk, and any of these foreigners that ran in there, which they did, a lot of mercenaries in there, a lot of U.S. mercenaries in there, a lot of British, a lot of them have been captured and in Russia, they're all over the news, and we are all up in arms. Oh, these people ought to be given Geneva Convention status. They're war combatants. No, they're not. They're friggin' terrorists. They're mercenaries. That's what they are. They were hired as mercenaries and they went over. They are not subject to the Geneva Convention. They're committing crimes. And that's true. You're a mercenary. You're not a a combatant. You're not a combatant. You are not fighting. You may be fighting on behalf of a country, but you're not part of their armed forces. You're not. Most of them don't even speak Ukrainian. It's crazy. Well, most Ukrainians don't speak Ukrainian. It's crazy. And I shouldn't say most, but a very good percentage. Anyway, including these 3 American citizens were all shot down. And you may not like what I'm saying. I don't care. This is the truth anyway. And so you might be going, yeah, but we need to do what's right. Who are we to determine what's right? Who the hell are you to determine what's right? My right might be different than your right, right? So here you're going to hear my right. If you want to call and argue with me, please do. 573-746-8020. Convince me why we have jurisdiction over the planet other than saying we have the biggest military and the biggest dicks. That's it. We're the big bad wolf, and therefore we get to do what we want. The end. That's it. That's what power buys you. And you buy into that power narrative, that's, a lot of people aren't going to like that, right? So anyway, let's get to the Castro regime. Here they subtitle. Here's subparagraph 1. Fidel Castro, Ruz, and others seized power in Cuba on or about January 9, 1959, overthrowing then-President Fulgencio Batista Zaldivar. The Castro regime controlled Cuba thereafter. Paragraph 2. The Castro regime established various ministries to support its objectives. El Ministerio de las Fuerzas Armadas Revolucionarias, the Ministry of Revolutionary Armed Forces, controlled all branches of the Cuban military. Within MINFAR, the Cuban Air Force and Air Defense apparatus was named La Defensa Antiaero y Fuerza Aérea Revoluciones, the Cuban Revolutionary Area and Air Defense Forces. Paragraph 3. Castro regime created La Dirección de Contrainteligencia Militar, Director of Counterintelligence Military Intelligence, part of MINFAR as its military intelligence agency. El Ministerio del Interior, Minister of Interior, oversaw the Directorate of Intelligence. I'm going to quit reading them in Spanish and give them to you the other way. That focused on foreign intelligence gathering. Unindicted co-conspirator 1 was Minister of the Directorate of Intelligence. So they're naming this guy. That's the unindicted co-conspirator 1. They didn't indict him, but they listed him as a co-conspirator. From in or around 1959 through in or around 2008, Castro Reyes was the minister of MINFAR. He was also vice president from 1976 to 2008. From 1959 through June 1996, Cuba's political headquarters, including the ministries, were located at the Revolutionary Palace in Havana, Cuba. Superior headquarters. That's the superior headquarters. Paragraph 7. 96, unindicted. They didn't indict. Co-conspirator 2 was the base commander at San Antonio Airfield in Cuba. Paragraph 8, at least as early as 1992 through approximately 96, defendants Lorenzo Alberto Perez, Emilio Jose Palacio Blanco, Jose Fidel Gual Barzaga, Raul Simanca Cardenas, and Luis Raul Gonzalez Pardo Rodriguez were trained MiG fighter pilots in DAA FAR. Luis Francisco Perez was also a trained MiG fighter pilot in DAA FAR during this time. And they have pictures of them, okay? At least as early as in or around 1992 through February 24, 1996, La Perez, Blanco, Barzaga, Cardenas, and Rodriguez, and LF Perez were jet fighter pilots stationed at San Antonio de los Baños Airfield in Cuba. Okay, that's the background of the people. So these people were fighter pilots, okay, the other people. Castro Ruz and others known and unknown to the grand jury. Of course, because you don't friggin' know. Castro Ruz and others known and unknown to the grand jury. You can indict a ham sandwich. Remember, grand jury. You ever get called to a grand jury, you ought to say, no, thanks. This is crap. There's nobody to tell the other side of the story. You get one side of the story. If you can't win here, lawyer, you're a terrible freaking lawyer. And the lawyer, the prosecutor that goes up and says, and the prosecutor goes and gets an indictment, tries to get an indictment by providing a sealed or unsealed indictment and gives it to the grand jury, and the grand jury doesn't give him an indictment, that's a shitty lawyer. That is a very bad lawyer. And they go, well, the grand jury didn't find enough evidence. Oh, idiot, because you didn't tell them more. Just lie. That's what everybody else is doing. The whole thing's a scam anyway. You get one side of the story. A grand jury is nothing. You think it's grand. Why? Because they call it grand. It's grand. Oh, my God, I've been invited to the grand jury. Isn't that grand? That's just freaking grand. I've been invited to the grand jury. Wonder who's going to show up. Nobody, you moron. Nobody shows up. The only person standing there is the prosecutor. He gives you a presentation and at the end says, now, do you think we should indict him or not? And you go, yeah. I only heard one side of the story, so let's go watch a movie. Let's go watch a movie, and at the end of the movie, you go, boy, that was a bad dude. That Joker, he was a bad guy. Let's indict the actor who played him. That's the same freaking thing, you moron. If you think the grand jury is grand, you better think again. It ain't so grand. It's stupid. And what they have, okay, so in most states, and by the way, it's hard to do afterward. You have to file a motion to dismiss, or you got to do something. But if they have the grand jury, suddenly they don't have to have a preliminary hearing, right? They don't have to have one. They've had the preliminary hearing. So in a preliminary hearing, most lawyers go, and the reason they go to see the preliminary hearing. So you get charged with a felony. You go to court in a felony, the very first step, and your idiot lawyer, if he isn't doing it, he's an idiot, in my opinion, okay? And or he has strategic other thing, but you better find out exactly why he's not doing it. Because the first thing that you should do if you're charged with a felony, especially in the state of Missouri, is at the end of it say, before you ever, because what happens is you'll get sent to associate court. You go to the lower court, and in the lower court, you sit there, and your only thing at the lower court is either get a waive the preliminary hearing, or they have a preliminary hearing. Even if you don't ask a question, go to the preliminary hearing, because you'll get the evidence. You'll get to see what the prosecutor presents to the judge to charge you. He has to have all the elements of the crime. And if you got a good judge might just throw it out. And if you have a good lawyer, you may win at the preliminary hearing part. This is where you attack the sufficiency of evidence, okay? So here's this grand jury indictment. Why are they telling us all this? Why are they giving us this whole long story of drama at the end? Because this is the movie they played for the grand jury. That's why. And so I'm sharing it with you. The grand jury process is a joke. Okay. And maybe not in every state. Maybe they have different provisions in different states. But in federal court and in state court, you don't get to be there. Okay. In Missouri, at least. In most other places, doesn't friggin' matter. If you have a preliminary hearing process, though, that's a different deal. You get to have a hearing to find out if there's sufficient information to charge you with a crime. Now you're charged with a crime. The preliminary hearing replaces the grand jury, okay? Then you can file an indictment. The indictment has to be heard by who? The grand jury. The grand jury hears it. Now they don't have to do anything. You don't get the right to have a hearing. There's already been a sort of preliminary hearing. There's a grand jury indictment. So the grand jury indictment gets rid of the need to have a preliminary hearing, okay? And the state level, okay? And there are ways, there's defenses and all that is different for different charges, different for different stuff like that. But the reason you have a grand jury is because the grand jury is a joke, and that this lets people believe that there's some formal legal process it's really bullshit, but they put it out there anyway because there's nobody there to defend the accused. Nobody. And this is how you get past step one of charging somebody with a felony. So all you have is the basics. And so now if you go to trial and you go through, you have to attack the basics because they've already gotten the right to charge you by putting this crazy bullshit process called the grand jury in your lap. Okay. So now we're going to have the background of the shootdown. We have the background of the participants, what they did. And now we have the background to the shootdown. Castro, Ruse, and others known and unknown to the grand jury used their leadership, membership, and association to form a dictatorship with absolute authority in Cuba. Oh, my God, that's horrible. grand jury sitting there thinking, that's atrocious. They're dictators, man. These are dictators. Of course they're the bad guys. The Castro regime established and maintained control over Cuba and her people through a reign that eliminated dissent, preserved their power, territory, and reputation, and through expropriation and nationalization of private business, funded those objectives. Gee, that sounds just like America. Only here we call it democracy. There they call it that's a dictatorship. You think the Clinton regime, the Biden regime, Obama, you think that's not those guys are all above board, right? They've never done anything. They never kill anybody. They didn't fly jets and kill private citizens. What about Israel? They don't just go out and kill humanitarian aid workers. That had never happened. They don't just fly into other countries and bomb the shit out of them, killing all kinds of civilians. They don't do that. No. We would never do that. We're a democracy. We're the good guys, right? We are the good guys. Well, we should quiz that because we're really not all that great. Individually, we're decent. We're good folks. But don't go thinking that just because you happen to be elected that you're some kind of a good guy. I mean, just look in the look in the state houses. Look around you. Wake up. Beginning in or around 1959, Cubans fled the Castro regime. Oh my God, they've been fleeing to the United States of America and elsewhere. Well, there's plenty of Ukrainians here. Maybe they've been fleeing. Maybe they've been fleeing, not a war. Maybe they've been fleeing the BS structure of the dictatorship that we installed. Maybe that's what they're doing. You're pretty selective in choosing who you get to charge with a crime, right? I better hurry this up or I'm never going to make it through. Beginning in around, I'm having too much fun with this. This is crap. This is complete crap. The beginning in or around 1959, Cubans fled the Castro regime, blah, blah, blah. I already said that. Beginning in at least or as early as around 1960. Oh my God, they've been doing it for 65 years. The former Soviet Union allied with Cuba. Oh my God. Vladimir Putin once again is the guilty party. Holy crap, it's Vlad. He's at it again. Beginning in 1960, the former Soviet Union allied with Cuba and began providing the Cuban government with significant economic and military support. Now, that's a big deal. I mean, my God, the U.S. government doesn't ally with other countries and provide any of them with significant economic and military support. That doesn't happen, does it? In or around 1978, I want to know what sense what benefit that sentence has in here, other than to say, Soviet Unions are bad dudes. Those are some bad people. It was a good theory. It just... can't quite work that way. Doesn't work that way. Beginning in or around 1978, the U.S. and Cuba reached an agreement establishing a maritime and airspace boundary in the Straits of Florida and elsewhere based on an equidistant measurement at the 24th parallel, that is 40 to 60 nautical miles north of Cuba and well beyond Cuba's 12-mile maritime and airspace jurisdiction. So they're talking about having some rules, right? The 24th parallel did not extend Cuban maritime and airspace jurisdiction, but did serve as an operational identifier, triggering notice requirement to Havana air traffic control when planes crossed the 24th parallel en route to Cuba. In or around 1980, Cubans fled Cuba by boat en masse from the Mariel Harbor through the Florida Straits. While many Cubans survived that voyage, others perished at sea. After the Soviet Union dissolved in 1991, their economic support for Cuba ceased. Cuba suffered economic recession, which peaked in around 1994. Cuban citizens continued to flee the Castro regime for the United States by boat, raft, and makeshift flotation vessels, including many who did not survive the journey. During that time, BTR rescued many fleeing Cubans at sea. At least as early as in or around 1992, The DI, that's the Defense Intelligence Directorate of Intelligence, sent spies to the Southern District of Florida to, among other tasks, infiltrate BTR and report to the Castro regime on its activities. Now, riddle me this, Batman. Are we not engaged in the same thing in reverse? Are there spies from America going into Cuba? Now, if they get caught on Cuban soil, they're going to be killed, or then they're going to be denied by the United States, right? So these guys, they're the ones with all the genius, and I'm sure they didn't have to provide any of this evidence, but this is what they put. Those spies included Rene Gonzalez, a.k.a. Castor, a.k.a. Iselin, and Juan Pablo Roque, a.k.a. German, a.k.a. Vedit. The spies posed as exiled pilots fleeing Cuba. Juan Pablo Roque also offered himself to the FBI as an informant on the activities of Miami-based exile groups, including BTTR. The DIA directed and controlled his cooperation with the FBI. That's comfortable for you to say now, right? But back then, I guarantee you didn't either know that or you wouldn't have said it. And you know, who knows whether it's true even now. It's you're not allowed to lie to the court, right? You're not allowed to, but all of this is questionable stuff. What evidence do you have of all this? Oh, we gave that to the grand jury, did you? You showed them a movie and they said, yeah, let's get these guys. That's what you did. And how do you have anything if you're not willing to subject it to cross-examination by somebody else with a different focus, with that doesn't have the same goal as you to indict somebody? On or about July 13, 1994, 70 Cubans attempted to flee the Castro regime in a tugboat named El Tres de Marzo, the 13th of March. The Castro regime's Coast Guard, a branch of military controlled by Castro regime, sank the tugboat and killed dozens of their own citizenry. Well, what does this have to do with anything? They sunk a tugboat of people trying to leave, and they said, you're not leaving. If America had a rule that said you couldn't take your tugboat and leave American waters, and said, by the way, if you go out there, we're going to kill you. Wonder what would happen there. Shortly thereafter, in or around August 1994, Cubans filled the streets in protest, along with the iconic seawall known as El Malecón in Havana, Cuba, in response to Castro regime's continued repression of seafaring migration to the United States. On or about November 1994, 3 unarmed United States civilian aircraft operated by BTTR dropped leaflets and other items that landed on the Cuban mainland. So American aircraft flying over. Ooh, what is this show? Oh, now I'm going to have to find out. Tell you what, the Castro regime took no military action against those aircraft. Isn't that crazy? Sorry, I got distracted. On or about July 13, 1995, 4 unarmed U.S. civilian aircraft operated by BTTR flew along with the maritime flotilla from the U.S. toward Cuba to commemorate the sinking of the El Tres de Marzo. So on 13th of July, they were celebrating the sinking of the 13th of March. The Castro regime's Coast Guard met the flotilla and formed a blockade. The Castro regime dispatched MiG fighters to the area. The regime took no further action. In and around 95, a Cuban dissident group advocating for peaceful transition from Castro to a democratic government formed in Cuba. They were known as Concilio Cubano. On or about January 9, 1996 and January 13, 1996, 4 unarmed civilian aircraft operated by BTTR flew leaflets containing excerpts from the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights that landed on the Cuban mainland. Cubans, including members of Concilio Cubano, received the leaflets. Concilio Cubano planned a meeting to begin on or about February 24, 1996. The DI, Defense Intelligence Directorate, on behalf of Castro regime, formulated Operation Scorpion, to perfect the confrontation of the counter-revolutionary actions of BTTR and provided instructions to its Miami-based agents to continue to provide information on BTTR plans and activities, but not to fly with BTTR to Cuba in or around February 96. Part of the Operation Scorpion's mission was for the WASP network to provide information related to BTTR, which notably included any flight plan toward Cuba on February 24, 96, to coincide with the Concilio Cubano meeting. The WASP network provided information with the DI, in which the DI was in turn to provide to the Cuban military, including DFR, Castro Ruiz, and the Castro regime. In response to BTTR flights on or about January 9, 96, and on or about January 13, 96, and in anticipation of future flights by BTTR, DAAFAR engaged in training missions, this is the flight people, with their MiG fighter pilots, including L.A. Perez, Blanco Barsaga, Cardenas Rodriguez, and L.F. Perez. The pilots practiced locating and flying low, slow-flying civilian aircraft like the ones used by BTTR. At or about this time, the Castro regime quashed Concilio Cubano's planned meeting and prevented the organization from gathering on February 24, 96, and thereafter. Okay? So these are all activities of a foreign government taken on foreign soil. Nothing has happened. If they didn't capture any of these guys, maybe they did, and they're charging them with crimes. And so that's fine because they're in your jurisdiction and you catch them here. If you can catch them here, you can get them for murder, but you can't get them for murder in somewhere that occurred elsewhere in the world. Okay? The murder had to occur in the jurisdiction you're flying in. Okay? And that's what they're talking about. Remember that little line that they gave you about, here's the line that we agreed to under treaty. We said we'd give notice to each other and we wouldn't go any further than that. That's how, that seems to be the way they're trying to claim jurisdiction over these planes shot down over probably the Cuban spaces. But we're not there yet. Let's get to the shootdown. And that would give you, maybe give you jurisdiction in the federal court in Florida. But I doubt it, because it doesn't cover the sea. It covers everywhere else, right? Jurisdiction on a boat, that's different. If you have jurisdiction on a boat, and on a U.S. boat, U.S. licensed boat, something like that, maybe that'd work, right? Maybe. But you can't, you still got to have both parties located in the boat. If I blow up a boat from somewhere else, I'm not on the boat. I just blew up a licensed boat, right? You're not on that boat. You can't take jurisdiction of me on a boat that I'm not on as the captain of that boat. Anyway, the shootdown. Now we're getting to the meat. At BTTR's January 96 flight, Castro Ruiz authorized use of deadly force against BTTR. Okay, that's his prerogative. As he can say, kill those bastards, shoot them down. You don't think we don't do the same? What do we do in America? Blow up that leader of Iran. Blow up his son. Blow up his wife and kids. Blow up that school over there full of girls because all the elites are over there going to school. Blow up Gaza. Blow it the freak up. Why not? I mean, geez, what are they going to do? Charge with murder? I don't think so. Not in America. They might be if they could catch us in Iran at the time Donald Trump flies to Iran. Maybe they'll pick him up and go, well, sir, we're going to charge you with a crime. Have a nice day. And they put him in prison. Okay? So that's how you get jurisdiction. You don't get jurisdiction by creative means like this. This is good stuff. So I'm eager to find out where they're going. But I'm only halfway through, and I'm only 9 pages of 26, so I got to cruise a little faster and quit commenting and yelling at people. So, Castro authorized the use of deadly force against BTTR. Oh, my God. After January 1996. At least as early as in or around February 94. And continuing through at least or around July 96. The military chain of command at San Antonio de los Baños Airfield in Cuba was from the air base to DFAR, from DFAR to MINFAR, then back down the same chain of command. All orders to kill by the Cuban military traveled through this chain of command with Castro Ruiz and Fidel Castro as the final decision makers. Okay, similar, Donald Trump, if he chooses to kill the leader, the Al-Khamenei, they want to kill him, Trump gives the order. Okay, Trump ordered that guy killed, period. End of sentence. Okay, so there you go. That happened. And he gave that order while located on American soil. He's more guilty of a crime of murder in America than they're ever going to be able to establish by any creative weaving of a tale like I'm telling you right now. Okay? And not that I'm saying you should be. These are decisions that are made by foreign governments all the time. What was Maduro charged with? Possession of machine guns. Possession of machine guns. That's even more creative. That one's even more bullshit, by the way. But this one, we'll get to the end because I haven't read all this. I just knew I knew what it was going to contain before I read it, so I chose to do it right here live. So you're getting Sam's live thought process while I read this horse crap. Indictment. Oh my God, they've indicted someone. At the time of their destruction. Okay, wait. On or about February 24, 96, at 1:30 p.m., approximately 3 unarmed U.S. civilian aircraft operated by BTTR bearing tail numbers N November 2509, November 2456 Sierra, and November 5485 Sierra left Opalaca Airport in Miami-Dade County, Florida. On or about February 24, 1996, a D-FAR MiG fighter jet operated by La Perez and LF Perez destroyed 2 of the BTR aircraft bearing tail numbers November 2456 Sierra and November 5485 Sierra. They killed 4 United States nationals, including U.S. citizens. 3 U.S. citizens. At the time of their destruction, the 2 BTTR aircraft were flying outside Cuban territory. In fact, they were flying over international water, traveling away from Cuba. Despite their contact with the Havana Air Traffic Control Tower, Cuban military did not provide BTTR with any warning of the imminent destruction of their aircraft. Okay, those are facts that maybe can be proven. Maybe they were just said in a movie format to the grand jury. After the Castro regime shot down the 2 BTTR aircraft, Barzaga, Cardenas, and Rodriguez followed the 3rd BTTR aircraft with tail number November 2506 near the 24th parallel, but that aircraft escaped destruction. And then you show a picture of the sole surviving aircraft on February 26th. Count 1. Okay, those are the facts. Those are the facts. Okay? Count 1. Count 1. Conspiracy to kill a U.S. national. Under USC, 18 USC, section 2332B2. Paragraph 1 through 33 of the general allegations section are incorporated herein by reference, beginning at a time unknown to the grand jury, but at least as early as in or around January 96 and continuing in or around April 96 while outside the United States. Defendants. They were outside the United States. Defendants: Raul Modesto Castro Ruz, Lorenzo Alberto Perez, Emilio Jose Palacio Blanco, Jose Fidel Gual Barzaga, and Raul Samanca Cardenas and Luis Raul Gonzalez Pardo Rodriguez did knowingly and willfully combine, conspire, confederate, and agree with each other and with other persons known and unknown to the grand jury to kill a national of the United States while the national was outside of the United States, and that is CC, MD-1P, AA, and other pilots and passengers of aircraft operated by BTTR, which conspiracy contemplated their murder as defined in Title 18 U.S. Code, Section 1111, subparagraph A. Object of the conspiracy was the object of the conspiracy to kill U.S. nationals by shooting down BTTR aircraft using information provided by spies in Miami to terrorize, intimidate, and retaliate against Cuban people and the Cuban exile community. Overt acts. To achieve the objective of this conspiracy, defendants and their co-conspirators committed and caused to be committed at least one of the following overt acts, among others, in the Southern District of Florida and elsewhere, because they know it's not Southern District of Florida, in or around 1994 after BTTR's November 1994 flights and dropped leaflets in Cuban territory. DI formulated a plan for Juan Pablo Roque to fly to a BTTR aircraft to Cuba in late 95 to embarrass and undermine BTTR. What's that got to do with anything? Seriously. On or about December 4, 1995, DI agreed to that Juan Pablo Roque should continue to inform on BTTR. Okay. At least as early as January 13, 96, and after BTTR's January 9, 96, and January 13, 96 dissemination of leaflets that landed on the Cuban mainland, Castro Ruz met with military leaders and authorized them to take decisive and deadly action against BTTR aircraft. Okay. He said what any leader would say. America would say that. China, you can't come fly your shit into our territory and drop leaflets telling Americans that Donald Trump is fat. You can't do that. You're not allowed. And so therefore, I, Donald Trump, say blow those aircraft up if they cross our airspace again. You think we're not going to do that? We're absolutely going to do that. On or about January the 18th, 1996, DI instructed WASP Network to report on U.S. military personnel and asset movement, as well as the United States military preparedness at the Boca Chica Naval Air Station, a United States military installation located in Key West, Southern District of Florida. On or about January 18, 1996, DI instructed Juan Pablo Roque and Rene Gonzalez to determine what aircraft BTTR used and other details regarding its January 13 flight. Oh, my God. They're looking for information on how to stop these people. On or about January 26, 1996, Gerardo Hernandez, a Cuban spy operating in the Southern District of Florida, returned to the U.S. from Cuba with approval for Operation Scorpion and canceling his previous plan for Juan Pablo Roque to fly a BTTR plane to Cuba to embarrass and undermine BTTR. But on or about January 29, 1996, DA conveyed instructions to its Miami-based spies regarding Operation Scorpion and the approved confrontation with BTTR. That's on January 29. On or about January 30, 1996, the DI instructed Juan Pablo Roque and Rene Gonzalez to avoid flying with BTTR and to use the particular phrases over the radio to communicate with Cuba if they were on the flight with BTTR. On or about February 1, 1996, the DI and its agents in the Southern District of Florida and elsewhere began planning Juan Pablo Roque's return to Cuba. The DI informed Gerardo Hernandez that the DI wanted Juan Pablo Roque filmed entering and leaving a Cuban-American exile group headquarters. On or about February 5th, 1996, the DI instructed its agents to make Operation Scorpion a priority and urgently report the BTTR flight data. On or about February 13, Cuban spies operating in the Southern District of Florida directed Rene Gonzalez to provide clear, detailed, precise information about upcoming BTTR flights. They ordered Rene Gonzalez not to join any flight and directed that if he could not avoid flying with BTTR, he should broadcast specified phrases via the aircraft's radio. On or about February 18, 1996, DI instructed that Juan Pablo Roque and Rene Gonzalez should not fly with BTTR or any other organization on February 24, 25, 26, 27, the anticipated meeting date of the Concilio Cubano. On or about February 21, Juan Pablo Roque falsely informed the FBI that BTTR would not be flying during the weekend of February 24, 1996, even though, as he then knew, BTTR was scheduled to fly during that time. So they found a patsy here. On or about February 22, 1996, the DI communicated that a DI officer had traveled to Mexico to support the departure of Juan Pablo Roque from the U.S. to Cuba. On or about February 22, 1996, Juan Pablo Roque met with Gerardo Hernandez. On or about February 23, Rene Gonzalez met with Gerardo Hernandez. On or about February 23, Juan Pablo Roque left Miami as directed and returned to Cuba. At least as early as in or around February 96, Castro Ruiz's command and with direction from the unindicted co-conspirator number 2, La Perez, Blanco, Barzaga, Cardenas, Rodriguez, L.F. Perez, and others engaged in training missions using Cuban military aircraft to find, track, pursue, intercept small civilian aircraft off the coast of Cuba. Paragraph 22, on or about February 24, 96, on or about at or about 3 p.m., 3 unarmed civilian aircraft operated by BTTR, having those tail numbers, flew south across the 24th parallel. At approximately 3 p.m., La Perez and L.F. Perez in MiG-1 and Blanco in a MiG-2 took off from San Antonio Los Baños Air Force, located near Havana, Cuba. At 3:20 p.m., Perez and sought authorization to destroy the unarmed civilian aircraft bearing tail number in November 2456S, which was flying at the time over international waters. La Perez and Perez LF were given the authorization to destroy unarmed civilian aircraft. At approximately 3:21 p.m., without warning, Perez and LF Perez shot down BTTR's unarmed civilian aircraft bearing tail numbers, blah, 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 using air-to-air missile and killing pilot CC and his passenger PM. At approximately 3:26 p.m., in response to requests for authorization by La Perez and the other Perez, pilots were given authorization to destroy a second unarmed BTTR aircraft. At approximately 3:28 p.m., without warning, La Perez and LF Perez and MiG-1 destroyed the second unarmed civilian aircraft, bearing tail number November 5485 Sierra, using an air-to-air missile, killing the pilot and his passenger. At the time of the shootdown of the two BTR aircraft, Barzaga, Cardenas in MiG-3 and Rodriguez in MiG-4 were inside their Cuban fighter jets ready to deploy. They listened to La Prez and LF Prez radio requests for authorization to destroy unarmed civilian aircraft. The authorization received for the same and confirmation that those aircraft were destroyed. Barzaga and Cardenas in MiG-3 and Rodriguez in MiG-4 took off from San Antonio Los Banos airfield located in Havana, Cuba, to join La Perez and Perez in MiG-1's pursuit of third unarmed civilian aircraft bearing tail number N2506 with the intent of destroying that aircraft as well. Unindicted co-conspirator 2 authorized Barzaga and Cardenas in MiG-3 and Rodriguez in MiG-4 to take off from San Antonio de los Banos airfield located near Havana to join La Perez and other Perez pursuit of the third unnamed civilian aircraft with the intent of destroying that aircraft, all in violation of U.S. Code Section 2332B2, which, by the way, doesn't apply to anything that we've talked about. It's a U.S. code. How in the world are these people all in violation of Title 18 U.S. code? They aren't even located in America. Okay, so that's interesting. The easy answer would be just go, screw you guys. We aren't doing this. But they've politicized it, so the judge has to, rethink and give any sort of the grand jury indicted these people. Come on. What else are we going to do? That's it. So murder. That's the first count. One, murder has now been told to us about what that is. All of these people full of photos. We have general allegations. We have a superseding indictment. We have overt acts that they conducted. That's all count one. Conspiracy to kill U.S. nationals. That's conspiracy, friends and neighbors. That is it. Count two, destruction of aircraft. Paragraphs 1 through 34 of the general allegations section and paragraph 4 through 31 of the overt acts section are incorporated by reference. On or about February 24 in the special aircraft jurisdiction of the United States, right? So now they have a special aircraft jurisdiction because that's why they mentioned that agreement with the Cuban government from way back when that said if you cross this parallel. So while in the special aircraft jurisdiction of the United States, unmentioned, by the way, they have 18 U.S.C. 32A1 34, 49 U.S.C. 46501, subparagraph 2. So they're creating their own jurisdiction here, all in an effort to be able to, and this is extremely tenuous and BS just by reading it, because they aren't even mentioning the jurisdiction. They're just, the grand jury doesn't know crap about jurisdiction anyway. Jurisdiction is for the courts to decide. It's for lawyers to have before they get there. You have to have the jurisdiction, so they have to convince the court. But if the court's on your side and the court's going to, just give you what you want, you have to wait till appeal. But in the meantime, you get to have an act, you get to file a case, and Donald Trump goes, well, man, let's go do what we did to Maduro. Man, that was great, wasn't it? We charged him with holding a machine gun. He's got a machine. I'm the biggest, baddest wolf on the planet. I'm going to go get him. And so, this is what they're trying to do all the way back in April. They saw that, oh, my God, here's a plan. We're going to capture that dude. Things will change in Cuba then. That's right. Excuse me. Geez, what games we play. You got nothing better in your life than to lie about jurisdiction. You just create your own jurisdiction. This is government overreach at its finest. This is what you do to make a name for yourself. Yeah, I charged Castro with a crime. Well, man, that was great. I guess I could do that. Who needs to be a lawyer? What difference does it make? You're not using it anyway. You're not using the law here. This is creativity at its finest. So on or about February 24, in the special aircraft jurisdiction of the United States, Raul Modesto Castro Ruiz, Lorenzo Alberto Perez. So here they're charging Castro. did willfully destroy and wreck an aircraft, that is, a United States civilian aircraft bearing tail number blah, by means of an air-to-air missile, which resulted in the death of human beings, CC and PM, in violation of Title 18 U.S. Code sections blah, blah, blah. Where is the jurisdiction over Raul Modesto Castro? Where? It's not mentioned. There's no jurisdiction mentioned. Even if the aircraft happened to be in the special aircraft jurisdiction of the United States, the defendant wasn't. Lorenzo Alberto Perez. Maybe he was. We don't know where he fired the missile from, do we? That's not mentioned, whether he was in that aircraft or not. This is poorly written crap. This is just some guy telling a story to 12 citizens going, don't you want to get that Castro after all these years? This is what's going on. Count 3, destruction of an aircraft. Same thing, and they're the next aircraft by means of an air-to-air missile. Nothing different in that count, just a different airplane. Count 4, murder. Count 4, murder. Paragraph 1 through 34 of general allegations, paragraph 4 through 31 of the overt acts of count 1 are incorporated by reference. On or about February 24, 1996, special maritime and territorial jurisdiction of the United States. Of course, Raul Modesto Castro was not there. Do you think that if Donald Trump is in his office in Washington, D.C., and he killed Ayatollah, which Khomeini was it? He killed one of the Khomeinis, and everybody else that he ordered killed over there, well, we just kill him. We killed him. He's admitted it. He's put it out there. I killed those guys, and that's that. I took them out. I gave the order. Of course he gave the order. Who else gave the order? That the special jurisdiction of Iran is going to take place, and they'll arrest Trump in the White House through a special action, drag him on over to Iran, and get him for murder under Iranian law? You'd think that was third world country law. That's what this is that I'm reading to you. This is third world country bullshit law. This is the king changing his mind, and you get a die because I say you get a die. Why don't you just send over the special forces, kill the guy like you did in Iran? Why this joke? I'd much more support the other stuff than going and destroying a system that I like to think is meant to be above reproach. This is not it. This is bullshit. And the lawyers playing these games are horseshit lawyers. These aren't real lawyers. This is crap. And you can tell them I said so. I don't care. This is crap. Let me go in there and defend this guy. No news, no nothing. And just keep going let me ask a couple of questions. But in front of the grand jury and see if they say the same thing. Well, wait a minute. How are you going to get jurisdiction? Where are you creating this jurisdiction in the U.S.? You have to, we can get, once he shows up on American soil, maybe if he committed murder in another country, there are exceptions to the rule that you can get it, or that he committed murder or directed a murder while located in another country, but the murder occurred on U.S. soil and he directed it. You could get him for the crime of conspiracy to commit murder. Any of things would be fine if he traveled to visit his grandma in Florida and you chose to arrest him then. You could arrest him and maybe take jurisdiction, but using it as a basis for Donald Trump to engage in a military action to go and capture the guy and bring him to the joke of a process like this in America, just like the idiots did up in New York to Maduro. I'd have rather you just killed the guy and moved on. I'd have felt better about it. Because that, at least it's a military action. Saddam Hussein, we need to just kill that guy. Who the hell else was the guy? ran the terrorist organizations. We chased him around forever, and they killed him in Afghanistan somewhere, and blah, blah, blah. That, you at least can say, well, the CIA did the right thing. But this is bullshit. I mean, this lawfare crap is what we fight. What I fight. This is the rules being twisted for you to create some kind of scenario. And no matter how you slice it, it's BS. Okay? So count 5 is also murder. So we had murder at count 4. The general allegations, blah, blah, blah. They did willfully and unlawfully with malice aforethought kill CC, a human being, with premeditation and during the perpetration of an attempt to perpetrate sabotage, that is, the destruction of an aircraft in violation of Title 18 U.S. Code 32. So they're extrapolating the supposed jurisdiction of somebody that destroys an aircraft into murder, not using the murder statute, but using he destroyed the aircraft. Okay? So this is creative writing 101 from your 8th grade literature class. For your 8th grade teacher, these facts are pretty solid, right? They're bullshit. The same thing goes for count number 5. They have the same exact title, just different person. Paragraph count 6, murder. Same thing, same maritime special. They destroyed an aircraft in violation of Title 18 and somebody got killed. Count 7, murder. Same thing. And that is it. And they didn't say the juror signed. They wiped his name out so you can't see it. So it's a U.S. attorney. Get this. Jason Redding Quinones. Wonder if he's a Cuban. Yara Lorenzo Klukas, first assistant U.S. attorney. And Abby Waxman, assistant U.S. attorney. And Michael Gilfarb, assistant U.S. attorney. These guys are the morons who signed this. Okay? And they made sure to get rid of the jury four-person, because that guy doesn't want to get killed by any of the spies from Cuba that are around. But they're the idiots that have been sucked into. I mean, imagine you got 4 U.S. attorneys going, yeah, I'll sign this thing, but boy, it's much more important that you believe what we told you, and you help us get this bad guy, sign this indictment, so that we can get on TV and say, well, all we did was give the grand jury the facts. The facts. We told them. The grand jury doesn't understand jurisdiction. That's for sure. When was Castro located on the aircraft that killed these people? You can't just destroy an aircraft and get picked up. So now they're just sitting there going, well, we indicted the man. We indicted him for destroying an aircraft. And by the way, once we get him on U.S. soil, jurisdiction will apply then. And this is what happened in 2003. So what they're doing is they're taking the stuff from 2003. Murder lasts forever. I'll bet you anything that the code provision of destruction of an aircraft in Title 18 U.S. Code 32. Let's see if we can find that. Title 18 U.S. Code 32. Where are we, morons? Where are we? Let's see. If somebody's selling you something. Wait, I'm not creating a PDF. I am researching. This is what's happening. Okay? These people are amazing lawyers, aren't they? Wow. Wow, these guys are geniuses. Title 18, U.S. Code, Section 32A, is a federal criminal statute defining the crime of destruction of aircraft or aircraft facilities, also known as the Aircraft Sabotage Act. It criminalizes the willful damage, destruction, or disablement of civil aircraft and surrounding facilities. The statute, let's see, 18 U.S. Code. Let's get to the actual code. Okay, here's the code. A, whoever willfully sets fire to, damages, destroys, and wait, which paragraph did they use on us? Hang on a second. They used paragraph, let's see, 18 U.S. Code 32A. And A has, 8 subparagraphs. Okay. First paragraph, sets fire to, damages, destroys, disables, or wrecks any aircraft in the special aircraft jurisdiction of the United States or any civil aircraft used, operated, or employed in interstate, overseas, or foreign air commerce. 2, places or caused to be placed a destructive device, substance in or upon, blah, blah, blah. That one doesn't apply. Sets fire to, damages, destroys, or disables an air navigation facility. That one doesn't apply. 4, with intent to damage, destroy, or disable an aircraft, sets fire to, damages, destroys, disabled, or places a destructive device in or approximately to. Nope, that's a bomb. Interferes with or disables with intent to endanger the safety of any person or with reckless disregard for the safety of life, anyone engaged or operating an aircraft in any air navigation facility. No, that's not there either. Performs an act of violence against or incapacitates any vehicle or any individual on any such aircraft if such act of violation of incapacitation is likely to endanger the safety of the aircraft. Communicates information, knowing the information to be false, and under circumstances in which information may reasonably be believed, thereby endangering the safety of any aircraft in flight. Nope. Attempts to or conspires to do anything prohibited under subparagraphs 1 through 7. Shall be fined under this title or imprisoned not more than 20 years or both. Okay? That's if you committed any of these things, it's 20 years. And the special aircraft jurisdiction of the United States is defined as terms defined in other law. In this chapter, the terms aircraft engine, air navigation, appliance, civil aircraft, foreign air commerce, interstate air commerce, landing area, overseas commerce, propeller, spare part, special aircraft jurisdiction of the United States have the meanings given to those terms in 40,102A of Title 49. So now we're going to go to there and find out what Title 49 says. Title 49 USC. Oops. C. And see what this says. There is no statute you are thinking of, which is the foundation definition section for aviation. Okay? This section, overview, transportation, aviation definitions. This section defines. Where is it? We need the full text. General definitions. Here we are. Blah, blah, blah. Landing. There are a lot of paragraphs. What was it? Special? What was that title? Definition of special aircraft jurisdiction. Special, that'll be in the S's. Foreign. Boy, there's a lot of them. Person, small hub aircraft, limited definitions. Come on. It's gone. Public aircraft, person, predatory. Nope, there's nothing here. United States, air traffic. Well, we're going to search. Because it looks like it might be, it'd be really funny if it wasn't even there anymore. It'd be real hilarious if it wasn't even part of it anymore. If it wasn't even part of the general definitions. But I can't find it so far. Definitions 41-102 policy. Wow, this is huge, though. These titles go on forever. I'll have to look that up for you and figure out tomorrow whether or not these special... Well, this is the last show of the week, sadly. But we have aviation. We have these definitions that they put in there that is just... we're not able to get there. Definition of special aircraft jurisdiction. We're not able to get to it. And let's see. Let's find this and see if we can get to it. I think we can, but I'm not in my legal research thing. I'm just in regular old Google right now. So I'll have to look this up when I'm... federal jurisdiction for crimes aboard aircraft, okay? So certain aircraft outside the U.S., foreign aircraft that have their next scheduled destination, blah, blah, blah. Special aircraft jurisdiction. Yeah. Added July. It's not there. It's Department of Justice. It'd be really funny if it just isn't there. It'd be freaking hilarious if that jurisdiction sentence just doesn't work anymore, but I'm going to have to look it up. I apologize for my diatribe this morning on reading this craziness of charging people with murder. I'm very much against the use of the legal system as a joke, right? And we do it far too often. All the crap creation. And now, what do? They honor these a-holes. These are great lawyers. No, they're idiots. And what they're doing is really not lawyerly behavior. Okay? If you have a valid, reasonable argument to put something out there, I expect you to. But using the law as a freaking club to beat people over the head with, I don't like that. It drives me crazy, and I just don't like it. Any person could read. I mean, my first thing that I found there was, remember what this said. Where'd it go? Overview. This section defines terms by, you're likely looking, the foundation definitions for section of aviation and transportation law in 40 U.S.C. 102, which contains general property and administrative definitions, right? And these definitions, navigable airspace, stuff like that, where they get to put the transportation sections in there. Let's see if this one has the interstate air transport, mail, medium, public aircraft, small hub, state authority, ticket aid. They have all kinds of limited definitions here. And I want to find here in Find Law, I want to search the special, what was it called again? Let's get to it. The special aircraft jurisdiction is where I was. Darn it, where'd my PDF go? Let's see here. All of these things, I mean, these are important. Destruction of the aircraft in violation of Title 18 U.S. Code is where they are. And given the definition of the destruction of the aircraft in violation of the special jurisdiction, the special aircraft jurisdiction, special maritime, on or about February 24, in the special maritime and territorial jurisdiction of the United States, right? Special maritime and territorial jurisdiction. Okay, it's not maritime. They weren't on the water. The territorial jurisdiction of the U.S. doesn't apply to Castro. Arguably, if this Lorenzo Alberto Perez was flying in U.S. airspace, maybe you could get him. But all this joke of a document is to give these people something to say, to show that they are doing something. These people have higher aspirations. And so they have to take these, and the people with money now know that these guys, will file anything. We'll file anything, right? And the penalty sheets are listed. All this stuff is listed for all of these people. So what they're trying to do is name these pilots, even the ones that didn't kill anybody, the ones that just flew and escorted. They're going to name these guys with the conspiracy so that they can go, and maybe one of them ran away to the United States, got on a boat and got here. So they got him, and so they arrested him. And they got him and his family and everybody trying to figure out how they can coax Castro to show up in the United States or give his whereabouts or spy inside or whatever to find out where he is so they can do a Maduro-type raid in Cuba and arrest the guy. And this is Donald Trump cleaning up the world. This is us. I object. I object. Overruled. I strenuously object. Remember that? Anyway, that's a movie reference. Sorry. I strenuously object. Oh, great. That helps. I strenuously object. So, stress yourself out there. Strain, will you? Go ahead. Strain there. Do it again. No, it's overruled. That's funny. At any rate, I believe this is joke law 101 for those of you who didn't go to law school. And, they taught jurisdiction on the one day that you were absent. You got to be there. And even if I went to Australia and killed somebody, they might be able, how are they going to get jurisdiction? There's extradition. There are all kinds of ways to submit yourself to the jurisdiction. You commit a crime you commit a felony, drug felony in, I don't know, pick a state, pick it. Let's come up with something reasonable like Georgia. You commit a crime in Georgia, a felony, okay? And then you immediately leave the state. So can the Georgian police come to your home in Wyoming and arrest you? Nope. They got no authority. No, the feds could for something else if they charge you with a federal crime, but that's not what happened. You have your drug crime that you committed in whatever. The feds can go anywhere, pick you up. The end. They just pick you up. That's what they do. It's what they live for. Selectively, of course. And if they want to, heck, they go to other countries and arrest you there and drag you back. But they don't really have jurisdiction over you until you get back. Okay? Now, arguably, if you're on an American airplane somewhere else, there's probably limitations or extensions of authority with a U.S. air person on a U.S. aircraft. But if you're on Turkish Airways, I wonder when they take effect there. Do they take effect inside of the aircraft, or is it when you cross into U.S. airspace? I'm not sure how that works. Maybe it's only in the airport. I haven't read that. I haven't studied that. What I'm saying, though, is you cannot create jurisdiction that doesn't exist. You just can't do it. And so jurisdiction that doesn't exist, you can't cure bad jurisdiction. Doesn't work. A lack of jurisdiction is attackable any time. If you don't have jurisdiction, the first thing that should be done is but if you hire a lawyer, that lawyer has to limit, because if a lawyer appears on your behalf to fight something, they say you've submitted to the jurisdiction of the court just to make an argument. So you got to limit the jurisdiction at the very beginning. You say, listen, I want to enter appearance for this guy only to fight jurisdiction and talk about the jurisdiction issue, but I want to enter appearance on this guy. Or I want, get a charitable organization to fight the jurisdiction. In fact, I have a charitable organization. I ought to hire a lawyer for Castro just to go fight these guys. Just to go, so how are you getting jurisdiction? Let's have a fight over jurisdiction for Maduro. You can't take it the way that you've taken it. And I wonder if anybody is really defending the guy. Or if, look what they've done. That's what the lawyers are saying. Look what they've done. What a horrible fight. What would be going against the entire group of people. Everybody hates Castro. Who's going to defend him? Nobody. Nobody's going to defend him. And that's the shame of our system right there. The shame is it ain't about the law anymore. It's about a system that doesn't exist and that they use as a club, and the people who are in it are part of a club, that the clubbers are using the club, the legal club, to fight the people who would stand up for it. Like me, by the way, because I am not a member of the club that just buries my head in the sand to say that, oh, gee, jurisdiction exists. My ass, jurisdiction doesn't exist, and you aren't that stupid or that far gone that you think it does. These, whoever these a-holes are that signed this joke of a pleading, this joke of an indictment. And then, you know why they really want the record sealed? Because they're creating a BS scenario that they don't want any yahoo to just be able to log on and pull down. Maybe that would be the fun part, would be to send a request, a freedom of information request or a court request, and say, hey, I want these documents. Can you provide them, please? Why can't I have them if you're not willing to give them up? Oh, gee, we have security measures in place. We have to worry about the security of the world. We're taking care of you, really. You just don't realize it, right? Yeah. Anyway, that's my diatribe for today. I'm leaving you. I'm done. I'm Samuel Trapp. This is Damn Radio. Samuel Trapp. Samuel T at internationalflavor.com. Should you wish to send me an email, I'd like to hear from you. And at any rate, I think that is going to end today's diatribation. Is that a word? Diatribalization? I don't know. Let's make up a new word. I have coined a new phrase. In the meantime, you just have a fantastic Thursday, and I will see you come Monday morning.